AI is being used in all kinds of ways right now by the very top operators to produce better results and by the majority of people to produce worse results just a lot more efficiently. And so there's still a huge opportunity in the market, going back to what I was saying earlier, for folks who are delivering the highest level of outcomes. Like, people still need the outcomes. And so there is a premium to be charged for delivering the outcomes to your like whole messaging. So if I could just wave a magic wand, sometimes this is for myself, sometimes this is for people who I'm talking to. The magic wand would be like, hey, calm down a little bit.
They said getting started was the hardest part, but no one told you how hard it is to scale a custom service business. It's time for your team to step up, but your clients want you. Discover how to scale to 7 figures and beyond by freeing up time and getting your team to run whole parts of the company so you can focus on scaling profits. This is the Hands Off CEO with Mandi Ellefson.
We are live now here with Gray MacKenzie from ZenPilot. Gray, thank you so much for being here with me and having this great conversation today about how the top 1% agencies are scaling and being successful in this market right now.
Yeah, I'm excited to dig into it. Let's do it.
Yes, absolutely. So the topic today is on going from systems to scale, how elite agencies run lean, profitable, and hands-off companies. And I think this is a really interesting conversation here because Gray and with your company, you're working. Why don't you tell us about who you work with and kind of what ZenPilot does, so we can have context.
For sure. So ZenPilot helps professional service firms. Like, if you zoomed in all the way, we run on EOS, Mandi. I can't remember. Do you all run on EOS?
Modified EOS, but yeah, pretty close.
So on that, like, their business plan is basically called the VTO, the Vision Traction Organizer. So if you were to zoom in on the marketing side of our VTO, you'd see English speaking professional service firms, 11 to 200 people is like the sweet spot of that. There's some other, there's some fun clients outside of that, San Diego Padres or Desiring God or some different organizations that don't fit neatly into that. But that's our bread and butter. And we've really been focused on agencies since starting in 2013. So what we're doing for them is helping teams streamline their operations on top of ClickUp. So that's the combination of the right tooling. How can we automate as much stuff? How can we make visibility and clarity across the organization as easy as possible? The right processes. So there's a lot of process development, process refinement that happens. And then habits is the big thing. We're kind of a change management company dressed up as a technology consulting firm. So really getting everybody rowing in the same direction, having shared principles for how we're going to work together. What is our project management methodology and how does it play out in the day-to-day really combines the tools, processes, and habits. And so all three of those are crucial. But that's what we do at ZenPilot.
And that's actually one of the things that I love about your company is because there are some people that approach the software side of things and they're just completely oblivious to how businesses should actually run. And then there's some, and what you're also integrating is best practices into the workflows to be able to create the habits and systems. So I love that approach. And I know we were connected some years back from a mutual client. I remember he actually called me last night. It was Yaku. And it was so fun to have a conversation with him yesterday and hear how he's going. And it just reminded me that's how awesome. We initially connected, right?
Yeah.
And they had nothing but great things to say about you. And I know we've actually worked with your team too. You guys have actually helped us with some of our systems, and particularly when we had a new operations manager in place, we were one of his most important. And I actually say that we work with operations managers and we help them put in place these operational systems too. With some of our longer term clients, and for them to get their operations manager in place, one of the 3 most important systems that we recommend is the first one is that the project management systems in place. If they don't have the project, all of them have some level of project management, we find, but it's usually a total mess and they can't actually run a company based on that. And so that was where we were connecting with you guys, and you gave us, you did some great work with our manager to help us put some of this in place. So I appreciate that. We got to test it firsthand. What ZenPilot's all about.
I think what you said, everybody does have some project management. It's always there, whether there's a tool or not there. You're paying that cost somewhere. It's either showing up in messy operations or it's showing up in an investment you're making to help your team operate more. So yeah.
And there was actually a phrase that that I've heard you say before, and I caught ourselves saying this during our quarterly planning. We're like, if it's not in the ClickUp, it doesn't exist. And I know that's one thing that you say, and that's very different than the way most organizations are running. What are you seeing on that?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. If you ask people, actually, there's a YouTube video I just put out yesterday explaining that and just kind of unpacking it in a little bit more detail. Saying, like, obviously this is a principle, whatever project management system you're using, like assuming that you have a team of more than a couple people and information goes beyond what a human brain can retain at any given point in time. Like, you need to be putting information somewhere. But that's an easy cliche to be like, oh, if it's not in ClickUp, it doesn't exist. And so anyways, the video, I was just trying to unpack like, why does that matter real briefly? But most of it is just where the rubber meets the road. What does it actually look like to get stuff in there? So what's the structure and hierarchy that you put it in? How do you train your people? How do you get people to actually do it? Anyways, I'll often ask people, in your current PM system, like what percentage of the day-to-day work is actually reflected accurately in there? And the most common answer is like, I don't know, 40%, 50%. Like it's not the majority of work most of the time. So to answer your question about like, hey, what does it actually look like? That's still where the average firm is, which I think, hopefully gives anybody watching this, listening to us a little bit of hopefully they're feeling two things. Hopefully they're feeling like, oh, that's a little bit convicting that you asked that question. And I'm feeling like, hey, we could and should do better, and life would be better if we did that. And I've got thousands of teams who can share like life is better when we do that. But there should be some relief too, that the bar, like there are excellent firms out there you're competing against who are doing great work. And there are organizations who are still earning a good amount of money, who are still like, who are struggling through, like they're succeeding in spite of themselves. And the bar is still not that high to be moderately successful.
That's a great way. I actually heard that question. I'm like, that is a bit of an incriminating question, because it's really easy to, I don't know if where you're seeing or your clients go off track. Like, where are they actually, I should ask you this, where are you seeing them having the conversations, or where their work is being done? Like, where's the rest of the 60% living?
Oh, Slack. Yeah. Slacker teams. Like it's all, there's still a handful, like we've, we break into these different pockets at a time. Like we spread so much by word of mouth that we break into pockets by industry. So that's like, hey, we worked with a ton of inbound marketing firms because that's what we were at the very beginning when we were back in the day when we were an agency with GuavaBox before ZenPilot. So we break in by industry, and that still happens. We break in by connection points. So the HubSpot ecosystem was like that original ecosystem, but then you go through these the high level community, and a lot of teams were running on high level and Salesforce communities. But then you break in by geography too. And so a bunch of teams in like Brooklyn was an early hub and did a lot of work then in like Manhattan and stuff. And anyways, so there's still some of those in-person like geographies that we'll go through where there's a lot of in-person teams. It's just like, hey, this all happens like face to face, but it's almost always Slack or Teams or a chat tool.
So what do you see as possible when you go in? First of all, what is the right percentage to really shoot for if you're at 40%? And then how do you actually get to that point?
Yeah, I think if you ask the opposite question, you said like a client calls with a question and asks something like, what percentage of the time is it okay that we have a real answer for versus making up an answer? Like we'd all feel really uncomfortable with a number less than 100%. Probably, actually, that's not true. There's plenty of agency owners who are like, I don't know, make it up half the time. But most responsible operators would say like, hey, we should have an answer every time for what happened. How did we get there? Where did it wind up? So I don't think that shooting for living truly out that ideal. I don't think that's an absurd goal to have. And there's organizations who've done that well. I think it's really hard to do if you keep your tech stack as obviously we've got a CRM system, we've got a PM system, but we've got a different finance system. And then we've got a different chat system and a different, like you just add all these systems up. I think it's really hard to shoot for. But I think your goal is to do it one way or another. So that might mean, hey, I've got to take information and I have to pass it. Like I've got to build these integrations or connections and pass that data to ClickUp somehow, or even if it doesn't live in ClickUp, like I've got to tie that somewhere together so that we can go get those answers. So I think wherever you are, I have zero problem saying, hey, let's take some baby steps towards it. We're at 40% today. Can we get to 60%? Like all the team at least has their tasks in there. We're still not talking about high level client ideas or brainstorming the system. I'm fine with saying, hey, that's a fine first goal to set. I just wouldn't stop there. I'd continue pursuing it. And I think this sounds like, pick up your room, like, wash stuff when you use it, like all the best habits that we should have and that most people don't live in. I think one of the reasons that those habits are so hard to get into is we don't see the upside of it. So when you flip your frame and you view it as like, I've got to constantly nag my people to go track their time in ClickUp or go get their work in ClickUp or chat in ClickUp instead of in Slack or leave a comment on that task instead of just calling somebody. When you view it that way, it's going to be very, very difficult to ever get there. When you view it the other way as everything that we do, we're learning from, and everything we learn, like we're going to take all of this as pre-training data for how we're going to use AI in our own business, like how we're going to use data to our advantage in our own business. When you realize all that stuff is an asset, and if it's not an asset, if it's like, oh, I don't want to train, like if your realization is, I actually don't want to train AI how to do the job based on our current team's process, then that's also a gift to you. That feedback is like, you have a pretty crappy process today. You have zero confidence in the strength of that process. So why are you doing it? Like, let's go do it better, provide better results, be able to charge more money for it.
Right. One of the things that you pointed out there was that they don't have the ability to get that information right away. So who has the ability to get that information right away? Usually the CEO, right? So it all comes back to them containing all the information in their head. Are you seeing that some of that the lack of the system set up, it keeps the CEO more in the day-to-day?
By system, yeah.
I'm talking about your project management systems having everything in ClickUp and specifically.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. If there's not a system you can rely on to say, if I delegate this, if I assign a task to Mandi and I say, hey, this is due tomorrow, assuming I followed the rules, I paid attention to bandwidth, and that was easy for me to access and see when she can realistically do this. If I can't walk away from that and feel like it's as good as done, both because the system's set up to show it to you right away, and I know that you've got the habit where you're going to look at it, like as you're in your shutdown routine at the end of the day today, you're going to see it and you're going to prioritize that and appropriately, and actually have the bandwidth to get that done tomorrow because your bandwidth is accurately reflected. If you don't have the confidence to think like, oh, it's as good as done, now I can forget about it, then there's no way to really let go of that. If you care about things getting done, like you can't. The biggest impediment to letting go is lack of trust, obviously. Right. So you got to have trust in both the way that the person's trained and the system, like that ties that all together.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's part of that too, is it's just even if your team member doesn't do it one time, like one time out of 10 times, it seems like, well, I got it done 9 out of 10 times. Well, you're wondering if they're actually going to do it that one time. So you have to be checking up. Yeah,
that's hard. You work with a ton of CEOs and owners who all our biggest strengths at the beginning turn into our biggest weaknesses later. Like you got this far because you can remember all these details and you come back to it and you make sure everything got done. And that's why clients liked you and they told other people. And so you kept growing. Now you're at a point where that will burn you out 100%. Like that has a 100% burnout rate for people if they have any scale at all. What do you see as some of the triggers keeping people from letting go and like embracing the systems to help them?
Well, like I see it actually starting in the sales process. It's like it's a lack of system, but the reason why there's a lack of system is that they don't really have a clear focus on where they're doing their work. Their clear focus is we do SEO, we do they do something, right? But the problem is that that's not really how people buy services. They're going to buy based upon the problem that they have, and a particular client's going to buy based on different problems, and they're going to want different things. So if you are approaching this like we're everything, like a lot of agencies are these everything to everyone, and it's really the ones that are, the more wide they are, they're really, some of them are really struggling right now, because it's not a very compelling, value proposition to say, where do you want to go? Well, we'll take you. Like, it's like, they're looking for vision. They're looking for how can we have some problems. How are you going to be able to solve these problems for us? And when you start your systems based upon the core foundational pieces for what is actually going to be relevant right now in this market, and it's not your process. And the buyers, we were talking about this just before we hit recording too, about how there are so many things changing about the pricing pressure, and what the pricing pressure, I'd love to hear your perspective on this too, but what I'm seeing from the pricing pressure is the same thing that's been around for a long time, is that clients have been reluctant to pay for processes. They've been reluctant to pay for, okay, you're going to do this service and check off the boxes, give us these milestones, they're not getting a real tangible result out of it, or they're not seeing a tangible result from it. So they're very reluctant to make investments because they're not making investments. They're throwing spaghetti against the wall and hoping it sticks. So that has been happening for a long time. But when budgets really tighten, all of the extra money that was going to those projects that were really about the tactical pieces, they're going away, or the budgets are getting so small that they're just, the profits are just being squeezed. Are you seeing that too?
Yeah, I think for maybe not crappy, but like mediocre work, for sure, margins are getting squeezed, because mediocre work is the easiest thing to have AI replace.
Yes.
It takes a lot of talent to get AI to be a substantial player in producing excellent work. Like it absolutely should be a major player in it, but it still takes a lot of talent to do that. And most people are not putting in the work to do that. This is what you see with almost everybody who starts adopting, the slow adoption curve of any of these tools is, oh, this is super cool that it could write my email for me. Like, I'm going to let it write my emails for me. It's like, hey, your emails just got 30% worse, but you got them done in, a tenth of the time as before. And at the very beginning, like, there's a lot of people who are willing to take that trade-off and be like, that's fine. Like, a 30% worse for 10 times faster. That's great. But what that creates then is like a huge opportunity for folks who are like figuring out how to use it to get maybe like twice as fast, but they're making it 10% better than it was before, or 20% better than there's a different way to go with it. And I think that lens isn't often applied to it when you just focus on the efficiency side of what the tools can do.
And yeah, exactly. That these tools are being focused on efficiency. They're looking at how do we be able to replace people? How do we be able to get more done? Instead of, coming back to your process, is this something that you want AI to replicate? So being really clear on, this is the client type that we're serving. This is the painful problem that they have. And we're not talking about they need a website. We're talking about painful problem of like, they want to get from 50 million to 100 million, that kind of painful problem. And I'm not saying that every agency can solve that problem. We definitely work with some agencies that can solve that problem. And some of the agencies we worked with, they're looking at problems for how do we be able to double their profitability? How do we be able to cut the churn in half? With some of these service companies, we work with a lot of service companies as well. But when you talk about it like that, it's a completely different equation.
Yeah, I think that for sure you have to be. And I think sometimes people hear me talk about process a lot and they're like, oh, then that's maybe what we ought to be emphasizing to clients. So I don't disagree at all. Like, I 100% agree with you that we should be selling the outcome. That outcome, just like anything else, is like, I don't know anybody who can take every well, that's not true. Taking people from 50 million to 100 million is a great example. Like, I know tons of people who can do that. Doing it efficiently without burning $300 million, like, that's a much smaller pool. And I can't think of anybody that can just blanket take any company from 50 to $1 million or $100 million profitably. So almost always there's like constraints. Hey, if you've got this type of business model, if you're in this, like, you've got this type of competitive edge. There's a business model that can work here. I know how to pour gas on that specific fire. Like, I know how to pour gas on an agency business model who's got a proven, like, the reason we don't work with very many 1, 2, 3 person firms, outside of the fact that like their payback time takes a long time, is like they're still figuring out who they are and what they do. So I need an agency who like has a process to deliver good work for clients, or they've got a reputation for delivering a good work. Things are chaotic internally. And they need to operationalize that to be able to scale. and they're willing to work on top of ClickUp. Like that's a whole lot of narrowing down our little box and corner of the world to say like, hey, this is what we're really good at. And then the outcome that you're selling, just like people selling, hey, we'll take this specific business model with this specific type of competitive edge in this specific industry from $50 million to $100 million. That's the outcome that we're after. And so people first need to know what's the outcome. Like, are we aligned on the vision? I don't know if you can hear any of the noise right now, but like we're doing this big outdoor living project. There's a massive pavilion and outdoor kitchen and like fire pit, like all this stuff happening. And like, first I need to see, hey, can you give me a vision / catch my vision? Like both of those are aligned. Then I need to see examples. So proof that like, have you actually done this before? Can you do this? And then the last thing I want to know is like, is this going to be a crazy experience to do it? So the process is really just part of the proof of what that looks like. And you only pull that out, like you only showcase that to the granularity level or detail that you need to go to. So like nobody needs to see inside of our ClickUp workspace to see how every deliverable has a set of subtasks and they're all whatever else. Like they need to know, what are the milestones? Have you done this before? Have you thought about it carefully and thoughtfully? And can you show me what are the milestones we have to cross off on that journey to hit my outcome that I'm after?
And I think that's a really great example too, because you have a clear outcome that you're helping them put in place the operations systematically that are like built into the DNA of their entire company, and working towards where 100% of the company is in there, because it's building it as an asset. It's removing the CEO from the day to day. It's making everything more streamlined and profitable. There are so many things that are there. And you also have defined success conditions. They have to be willing to build this on top of ClickUp. They have to have figured out what they're already wanting to scale, right? Because that's not your role to figure that out, what that is to scale. That's one of the things that we do is actually like they have all these different things and they're really good at certain parts of it. And then there's these other parts that they just brought on because it landed on their doorstep and they needed the cash. And then before they know it, half their company is like all these like ill-fitting projects that are not quite what they were looking for. And you can't scale a company like that. You can't quite build systems and processes around that because you don't even know what you're doing best. And I threw out that example of like 50 to 100 million.
Yeah. Because
one of the things I do find is that we have clients that have that ability in them. They've been able to do that like once or twice for a company, but they feel like it's kind of a fluke. And they're like, well, it was just, but when you actually look at what are the success conditions and you work it backwards, you can realize, well, like, actually, that's really what we do. Like, we thought we were a branding company, but really what we are is a growth partner for mid-market companies that helps them be able to take their brand from 50 million to 100 million. I'm just giving that's just only one example of that.
Right.
But when you understand those success conditions, and when you actually look at the outcomes that your work helps produce, not everything, like you're obviously this, like a branding company, for example, is not going to necessarily, they're going to be one of many things that made this whole thing happen, but that outcome could not have happened without them.
Yeah. Right.
So it's getting clear on what it is that you want to be that catalyst for, and then building systems and processes around that and working back from the outcome and saying, how do we be able to operationalize this outcome, as opposed to how do we be able to operationalize this and the checks and boxes and maybe it'll work for them, maybe it won't, but it's not really our problem.
Sure. Right. Yep. That makes sense. As you're building out that framework, like how do you be the transformation partner to your clients that you want to be? Do you think about this in terms of distinct systems, or like where are you starting most of the time? So let's say we talked about like, hey, this starts in the sales process. So we've tweaked your sales process. You have a better offer. What's the next, like, as you think about this, what's the hierarchy of systems and like the next place to go most commonly?
Well, and going back to that, the first system on that is Power of One. So one client, one painful problem, one outcome. And then that you build that into an offer, and then you build that offer into sales messaging, right? And all of this, now you have a system that's built. So you have something that you can actually replicate, but you have something to sell, and that you have something to sell for. Actually, what we see is that a lot of our clients are able to charge. That they're able to use this when they have it quantified. They actually go into a different level of pricing tier. So it unlocks budget that they said, we don't have the much budget. What they really meant is we don't have the budget for you because we see you in this branding bucket. We see you in this, in this paid ads bucket. We don't see you in this bigger picture perspective of a real true growth partner for them. And when they see you as a real true growth partner, then you get access to the C-suite. You get access to go beyond just like if it's just the marketing department or whatever tactical solution. But it allows you to be able to go and sell something that you can charge 2 or 3 times the price point. Now that gives you margin. That gives you the ability to build out, like the systems that you're talking about. They cost money. It costs money to pay your team. It takes some bandwidth to focus and be able to really be an exceptional company. So what do you need to have for bandwidth? You need to have profit. You need to have the cash to do that. So what that means is you have to be able to be good enough to be able to command the price points to do the level of exceptionalism that you're talking about.
Yeah. Makes sense. I'm curious then, like, so we've got, actually, can I throw this a total tangent? So you can bounce off of this one if you want to get off of this right away.
This is fun.
So, like one audience, one offer, kind of like the power of ones. And then most of the examples I think that we point to have variants of that offer. How do you feel about variants? Do you know what I mean? Like, hey, I've got our main thing. I've got our main thing, like ZenPilot. You're going to go through our blueprint, then you're going to go through an implementation. Then we're into the optimized phase of what happens, whether you do it or we do it.
Okay.
But we've got this big audience. There's folks who aren't ready for a full blueprint, or it's like, hey, I worked with you a while ago. Like, is there another offer, another way to work with you? And so we do have like a lower tier way to work with us at ZenPilot. That's not the core thing. It doesn't make sense. Like, there's people who will say no to, but and I know at different times you've had different offers. So do you see that as like, it'd be easy for me to sit here and try to make an argument and say, hey, it's still the same audience who we're going after, and we're still serving them on top of ClickUp, and we're still doing some amount of design first and then build. Like, we're going through this iteration of this process. Do you see any incongruency with that, or is that how do you work with that?
I think that's a really good distinction. And what happens is that as you scale your company and you have more sophistication in your company, breaking them apart makes more sense. And it makes more sense for a number of reasons. But when I will say that if you have a company that you have limited capacity, you sell the full enchilada. And that's one thing that we did for a long time, because that's the capacity we had to do it one way. And then as we've grown, we've been able to split apart some of our things, like it sounds like you have too. But the most important thing is to not water down your messaging. And what happens is that a lot of companies, a lot of service firms, you're like, well, we do this and we do this. Well, it just kind of depends, right? Well, instead set the high bar and say, well, it depends on these factors. And this is who our profit sweet spot client is. And this is who we're calling in. And then what's going to happen is that your brand is so compelling. Gray, I know you guys put some of the most amazing content out. And I've seen you put together these amazing demonstrations. You're capturing more market than just the people that are qualified to work with you at the higher level. So you have all these other people that may need to move up to the next level. So you can be able to sell something lower for them that's going to service them for where they are at right now, and then they could grow into your next customers for later on. Or maybe it's not. Maybe that's also, that could just be paying for your lead acquisition as well, at the same time as providing a service for other people. There's a real advantage to selling this too, because I know that your ZenPilot, you guys have quite a brand, and you're pretty well known in the industry. And one of the challenges with working with just a really small boutique is you don't have the ability to get that reach quite as much, because you don't have as many people sharing the word of mouth. That's actually been one of the challenges that we've had at Hands Off CEO, actually, because we have been so boutique in the past that we haven't had as much of that word of mouth moving forward as like I know you guys have, but when you've had more services. Sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's helpful. I think it's helpful just to hopefully it's helpful for some folks just to point out, hey, there's some nuance in what this looks like when it gets played out. I think driving towards simplicity is the key, and the smaller you are, the bigger the temptation it is to deviate from simplicity, for sure. But obviously, like everything we talked about so far is really the input side of this. Like everything you accept in the sales process is another variable that you've got to build a delivery system for if you're ever going to repeat it. And so the fewer obviously variables you have, the easier that system is to design on the backside. That doesn't mean that like there are totally legitimate reasons to not minimize how many variables you have. The minimum is money. Like if I'm totally willing to accept more variables for a lot more money, because I can solve a lot of those problems. And then there has to be some lines drawn somewhere. Like one of the variables that we get asked about most frequently, we get about 5, and I put them each into like different tags internally in our CRM in case we ever do branch out or go to a different PM system or something. But I'm running on Teamwork. I've been on Teamwork since 2017. Love Teamwork. I've been following your content. Like we need everything you guys do from a process and team training perspective, and even how we set up a little bit of the tool. Will you work with us? But we're going to stay on Teamwork. And it's like, that's a pretty tempting variable. Like at this point, there's 120 different folks in that tag in here. It's like, well, that's pretty tempting. But that's so far, and at some point that could change. But so far, that's been like, hey, here's the line in the sand. This is a variable we're not willing to accept right now because of the overhead and cost of complicating our system.
Right, and I think that's a wise variable to put in place. And at some point, an expansion path, you could just hire someone who's just focused in that, and they already have the expertise in Teamwork, and then you have your proven process. You can just build into that. But like you're also boiling the ocean too. So you have to decide what point do you want to be doing that?
Right.
But I see another reason to put into place these extra constraints too. And this is actually one of the reasons why we've done it. Like in the past, this year, we actually decided it was a very difficult decision, but we decided to split apart our programs and require that people go through our invisible advantage, like to build their irresistible offer together. That's a 12-week growth intensive that we require them to go through to beforehand. If they can check off, if we know that they have everything in place to move forward to the other one, like it's possible, but almost none of them do. And it's very rare that they do. I mean, I find them every now and then, but where they're drowning in work, and they have this really incredible sales engine. But most of them don't have those pieces in place because they're having all these problems all at once. And we used to solve like the capacity issues at the same time as trying to solve the sales at the same time. We're doing those at the same time. And it was creating a lot of complexity. And while it did serve some of our clients to be able to do them at the same time, we've just now drawn a line in the sand and say, nope, we're doing this right now. And they're like, oh, but we need to work on this too. Like, well, here's the thing is that like, if we work on this at the same time, you're going to slow this other thing down. You're not going to be able to have the sales and the cash flow to be able to do this other piece. Like you need to hire a manager, but that takes task to be able to hire a manager. We have to do these things first. So you're just going to need to buckle down and like, yeah, it's going to take some time to do this, but that's just what it needs to take for you to bring the sales. And for us, that's just taken more leadership to do that. But it's also done a great thing where we get to screen the people who we're working with longer term, and we can just really decide like, are you complete with this? Perfect. I'm so glad that you're happy with this. And you know what? Maybe we'll connect on something else later. But I don't know if you're seeing that too. Like having these multiple steps, make sure that you're bringing in the right people so everybody's happy.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's like nuances is a part of this, but I do see advantages from folks who have a clear process on the front end. One is like screening. So you're adding in a protection to your delivery team for sure. So maybe I'll just speak to some of the upsides first. You're adding in a protection layer. Like you get a chance to, in your case, we've got the invisible advantage. Like it takes 12 weeks. Well, if they're awful to work with after 12 weeks, and like we're in and out in 3 months, there's a chance to screen people out. You get a natural expectation reset built in would be another big advantage. Like at the end of these 12 weeks, then what's the next thing that happens? Like there's a chance to reset expectations. We're just better educated to coach each other on how are we going to behave as we move forward into this next engagement. There's a lot more trust at the end of that engagement together. So, talk about commanding higher fees. Like this is one of the easiest ways to do that is to have built the trust. People have tasted what this is going to be like, and now they know more about what it looks like. And then because you've simplified the offer from here's everything we possibly do for you, I package it up into a custom offer for you. Obviously, you've got simplicity in terms of how you deliver it, but also you're going to shorten up your sales process on the front end. So I think those are like 4 distinct, real big advantages to having a clear way to package up and put it out there. And then on the flip side, you need to figure out, and at different stages of firms, like almost everyone who does that goes through this growing pain, which is who comes back and sells the next step. Am I giving my delivery team, who's not trained on sales, am I giving them the task of trying to sell what is typically the much larger engagement on the back end? And if not, am I, founder or salesperson, coming back in and I'm just the person that they talk to, a prospect or a client talks to when I want money from them? And so there's some work that goes into figuring out that challenge. And occasionally, from our own experience and from talking with a whole bunch of other folks who've tried this too, occasionally there are folks who would have committed to a much larger engagement up front, and they'll actually wind up spending less with you than they would have committed to. I've had some really fun conversations with folks who've gone through our blueprint process and said, like, hey, I came in, I had a buddy who told me this was going to be $30,000. And so I was just anticipating spending $30,000 to go work with y'all. We did the blueprint, we answered most of these questions, and we wound up working with you in a much smaller way beyond that to implement. That's not the majority of cases. And I think that's like, is not a reason to abstain from that at all. Like, I think that's even better in cases where it's like, hey, we were able to solve most of the issues. You weren't that far off. Like, you can go solve it with this. That's an awesome outcome. But I think those are a couple of the things that you just could be prepared to ride out if you go to that model that you're talking about, where it's like, here's step 1, here's step 2, here's step 3.
It's so true. That absolutely is the case. And it's one of the reasons why we kept things really simple with our Scale to Freedom program for a number of years, because it was so much simpler not to have that extra step there. And that we're like, no, we're taking the full commitment. Like, this is what it takes. You got to build this, and then you got to need to operationalize this. Like, this takes a year to put this together. And now I really like having it 12 weeks, but it does take different systems and processes to ensure that you are following through on the promise, and that you have a clear next problem that this engagement has created. Because when you're solving one problem, you're going to create another one, and you need to have a clear way that is going. And if they're not ready for the next level, which actually some of our clients aren't ready for that, they need extra sales support while they're putting this in place. So we started a sales incubator program that it works with them on a month-to-month basis to be able to help them get their cash flow up to that place. And I'm actually really liking that. I resisted it for a long time, I'm going to be honest with you. It was just like, you're not ready. Okay, well, let us know when you're ready. But I'm liking that we have that in place now, because it really services our clients. And like, because what we're seeing too is like the 12 weeks, they get a good result, but like, it's right at the level where they could even get the next level result. We just had one of our clients who was in the sales incubator program for like a month or two, not even 2 months. And she went and sold $500,000 worth of sales. Yeah. That would not have happened if we wouldn't have been like writing her to be able to stay consistent when she was getting eaten alive by her operations, and she really needs the next level of support, but she's kind of in that middle stage there. And a lot of that is just getting past the mindset of like, I've got to just focus on this so I can get the cash flow up so I can actually solve the real problems. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, cool. So I would love to hear, we talked about, one of the things we want to talk about is AI. As we were talked about how there was this perceived problem, and there, we mentioned about the pricing pressure in the market, and I'd like to hear what your perspective is on what's causing that pricing pressure. Yeah.
So there is very real pricing pressure from AI. It's like the starting point for this. Everybody working anywhere knows part of my job, some jobs that's 2%, some jobs that's 50%, can be done with AI, either a quality close enough to be passable at or better than what I'm doing in a fraction of the time and in a fraction of the cost. Clients are certainly then, their expectations are being reshaped by the reality and also by the perception that AI's got, like, how hard can it be to go create that image for that post, or how hard can it be to like, there's AI video editing tools. Like I've been playing with Sora. How hard can it be for you to do the motion, like video that I want, or, hey, I put a couple prompts like in voice mode into ChatGPT and it spits out a marketing strategy for me. Like, why are you telling me we're going to spend 3 months and $15,000 on a marketing like a strategy to grow my business? So there is definitely real pressure there. There's also a perception, both on the client side and on the agency side, that I think continues to exist there, that, hey, I'm doomed if I don't solve this problem right away. I'm doomed if I try to charge what I was charging 2 years ago, or if I try to charge more than I was charging 2 years ago. Like, this is just a matter of time. It's just a ticking time bomb. This all feels so fragile. And that's a whole, like, there's constantly been this, and this is just the current context for the same founder psychology challenges that I'm sure have always been there. But I keep hearing that word fragile, like, oh, this all just feels so fragile. Like, this could go away any second. I'm paying attention to the AI releases, and this is really stressful. So I think my perspective is there is a real amount of pressure. AI is being used in all kinds of ways right now by the very top operators to produce better results, and by the majority of people to produce worse results just a lot more efficiently. And so there's still a huge opportunity in the market, going back to what I was saying earlier, for folks who are delivering the highest level of outcomes. Like, people still need the outcomes. And so there is a premium to be charged for delivering the outcomes, to your like whole messaging. So if I could just wave a magic wand, sometimes this is for myself, sometimes this is for people who I'm talking to. The magic wand would be like, hey, calm down a little bit. You absolutely need to be dedicating real time to staying on top of AI and finding out, how does this apply in our business? I've got a super cool like client health coach agent set up in ClickUp that I'm just like, am loving. Like, there's a lot of really cool applications of the platform, but I think the message most people probably need to hear, and I realize there's two different buckets. There's the people who need to be told, hey, things really are changing, pay attention. But I think most people are paying attention and they feel paralyzed by it. And if I could wave that magic wand, it would just be, hey, relax a little bit about it. Put in the habits and the routines to like, how are we learning about this? How are we finding real ways to apply this? But let's not stress out about, like, there will still be a need for what we do in a really excellent way for a long time to come, especially if we're outcome focused, not just service focused. And for sure, things are going to change, and that's totally fine. Our job is to be on top of that change. So when you want to know, like, AI is going to change everything for project management. Well, like, my job at ZenPilot is to know how AI is going to change everything for project management and lead you through that. And the reality is, it's not going to change everything super quickly. The same principles of tools, processes, and habits, like, those are always going to be there. And so it's just like, oh, I don't need to freak out about that. I just need to be on top of it and be ready. Like, we are in a position to be really well equipped to lead agencies through AI transformation in operations and project management. And what we can't do is give into the pressure that, like, to go market, everything's going to change tomorrow, because it's not what's happening. Like, there is a lot of change happening, and you want to be early on this stuff, but you're certainly not at the like existential risk as on the short time horizon that so many people are giving into so much stress about, because that's what's being marketed.
Yeah. I think that the mediocre players do have an existential risk right now. The mediocre ones, because AI is replacing what they can do. And there's people who are willing to do mediocre work for cheaper than what you can do profitably for. Like, so for the ones that are in that space, or if they're positioned, they might not even be mediocre, but if they're positioned as mediocre,
sure,
they're, I would say that they need to actually change. And it's not even about AI. It's about how they, like, to your point, how do you be exceptional and actually, I love what you said. My job is to know and lead you through it. Like, that's what their job needs to do. Is their job is to elevate their leadership. And this is to your point, like, you can still raise your prices you can still charge. It's not like you're raising your prices for the same work you're doing. You are elevating what you're doing to a whole different category with a different type of client. It might even be the same client, but they pay differently for that outcome.
Right. I think so. I mostly agree with you that, but I think it's mostly just a matter of time. Like mediocre agencies, we had like offshoring was the big,
right.
The earth is flat. Anybody doing managed website hosting in the US charging $150 an hour should have been dead, at least a decade ago, if not more. And the number of firms that I bump into who are still doing that exact same thing that I was doing out of my college dorm room in 2009 is kind of absurd to me. And so I feel the same way about AI. Like I'm not saying I want to be that company. I'm not saying that there's anything especially praiseworthy in that organization, but there's still businesses hiring the person who they met at the Chamber of Commerce to go do something. Like I still don't think they're like the time horizon that a lot of those companies are they doomed? For sure. If you asked me a decade ago, I'd have been like, hey, they've got maybe 24 months. So I realize it's to my advantage to say everything's changing. You are doomed. If you're mediocre, like you've got to get out now. You got to change right now or get out. But I don't think it's that. Like I think we're still, those people. Maybe not. Maybe this is the time that is very different. But I still feel like there's probably still going to be some people making a decent amount of MRR on dumb managed hosting in like in 5 years. So I don't know.
It's such a great point you bring up. And actually, I think it's a great distinction too, because while those companies, I was actually thinking about it from the terms of like, how do you being competitive and actually being able to go against, like, if you're going to sell on LinkedIn, if you're going to have a website that's attracting any business, like those companies are not, they're dinosaurs and they're not attracting anything. But if they're going to the Chamber of Commerce and they're the blind leading the blind, I mean, even a blind squirrel finds a nut, right?
That's right. There's a space for those still. Yeah.
That's a really good point. It's just a business that they have to constantly be hustling at and working really hard at because it's ultimately, there's just not a lot of demand for it except for people who don't know any better.
Yeah. I guess like my take on this, and this is more psychology than process. So my take on this is mostly, that most of what we should do is really dictated by what we want to experience. Like I want to be in an organization that's constantly growing and getting way better at what we're doing. Where like we look back and we kind of laugh at ourselves for what we were doing 12 months ago and be like, oh man, that was so hard the way that we did it. Or wow, that was really like hit and miss. And how we help teams like onboard the account manager side of what they were doing in the click or like, specific use cases. I want to look back and be like, that's so funny that we didn't have that problem solved and now that problem's solved. But I also there's some, like we could stop changing anything in what we do, sit here for probably 2 years and still have a business that's kind of like at a similar point to where we are now, even if we're not pushing forward. And so I don't think it's like existential ZenPilot's gone in a year. And that gives me some solace. And then the terrifying thing to me is like, I don't want it. That's not the experience that I want. The thing that motivates me is like, I want to have a different type of experience, build a different type of company, mostly because I want to work with a totally different type of people. Like I want clients who care about excellence in operations. I want people who are like, yeah, good enough is like good enough for them. Good enough's not good enough for me. And I want a team who's kind of wired the same way, where it's like, we are going to be exceptional at what we do.
Oh, I love that. And it's such a great place to end this. One of the things I just loved what you said about, a lot of people you said, I'm just going to laugh at ourselves for where we were a year ago. And like, that is such a beautiful way of having disconnection around that, as opposed to just like feeling shame about that or having imposter syndrome about that. Because I have to say that looking back at some of those things, I haven't necessarily laughed at them. Sometimes I've felt like, oh, why weren't we better?
Right.
And it's such a better way to look at it and say, laugh at it, because you were doing as well as you could at the time. You were generating results. Maybe it wasn't perfect, but here's the thing is your iteration right now isn't perfect either. It's just effective. And I think that's the way that we strive to is becoming increasingly effective. And I love your commitment to the excellence. It's really inspiring, Gray.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I do think that the only way you have to take some of the pressure off of this has to be perfect right now if you're actually going to give yourself the freedom to improve and get better. So you can put all this pressure on stuff, but that's just like, totally counter to if you like, the science experiment is like the easiest way to look at it. Like if the scientist is like, this has to work. It's like, it's devastating when it doesn't. You might as well just throw up your hands and give up on everything instead of being like, all right, we tried that. Like we still don't have a light bulb working. Like if we can let go of that and say, it's fine, we're going to try the next best hypothesis. And then we'll take the good things from that and learn from it. We'll take the bad things from that. And those are a gift too. Like we'll figure out how to make that better. And I think what you find is like everybody hiring people want to be in that environment. They do their best work in that environment, but clients love that. The 4 quadrants of client reporting is like, what did we do? What were the results? What did we learn? And what are we doing as a result of that? And clients love, everybody's telling them, here's what we did. Here's what were the results. Too often agencies are like, so we're awesome, right? Like keep working together instead of being like, so here's what we learned that could have been done better. And that humility, it just like authenticity around it. If you're being honest in that, you're getting better. So you're producing better client results. Clients are learning at the same time. So they're happier. They're getting more value out of it. It's much more like a same side scenario than me trying to justify every single thing that we did and saying like, this is why it was the best thing possible to do, instead of just coming to you and saying, but I thought that was the right thing at the time. I think looking back now, here's what I would do differently. Like, what if we tried this? And obviously you've got to be, I'm not saying that your lesson should be like, hey, we got 90% of this wrong. If you did, you got to own that and you got to go fix it. And you're probably going to lose some money on that engagement. Hopefully you got 80 or 90% of things right, but there's always something to learn from it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, Gray, what is the best way for people to reach out to you and to connect?
Yeah, LinkedIn is great. So if you connect with me and Gray MacKenzie on LinkedIn, that's great.
Do you have any cool resources that people should check out on your website?
I'm putting out, so I would subscribe to our email newsletter down in the footer. You can join First Class Operations. That goes out every other week. I'm back in the seat of writing that, and that's been really energizing for me. So there's a new edition going out tomorrow. And I'm doing a series right now on the ZenPilot methodology. So if I say, what's your project management methodology, and your eyes glaze over or you're like confused and don't have an answer for that, I'm offering this as a like, hey, here's principles that I've seen work well, that are coherent, that work together. That's one of the challenges so often is like, you've got a methodology, I've got a methodology. They don't play well together. And that's really hard when you put together 20 different people on a team and don't have some shared principles. So I'm doing a series right now, breaking down kind of point by point the ZenPilot methodology. So I'd point people towards that.
Love it. Well, thanks for that. So go ZenPilot.com. Is that right?
Yep, that's right.
And for those tuning in, if you want to find out how you can step into the next pricing tier and how you can be able to have an offer that will resonate with your market, that will allow you to continue to expand the excellence that we were talking about with Gray, I go through it on an executive briefing called Hands Off CEO. If you go to handsoffceo.com/briefing, you can come, and it's a live coaching call where you can get actual direct support and feedback on your offers and how you can make them more relevant and easier to sell. So thank you again, Gray, for coming on. It was such an amazing conversation. As always, our conversations are always so interesting. So I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Mandi. This is always good to talk with you and be with you. And I appreciate you taking time today.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Hands Off CEO with Mandi Ellefson. If you want to work less and make more, make sure you subscribe and get a new episode every week, and help spread the word by leaving a review.